Welcome back. Well, it took 3 attempts to get the sound, but that's fine. It's fine. You all know what it feels like to be in that chair when you press the button and it doesn't all go as you expect. So welcome back to the auditorium for a couple of hours of really exciting presentations and discussions. First thing to say before we embark on our first presentation is just to mention our social media channels. So we're really trying to get some excellent social media coverage of the event this week. So please do everything you can to like, share and comment on the content that's being put out on social media. We're using LinkedIn, we're using Insta, we're even using TikTok. How about that? Whether you'll see any dancing on there, let's see. So the hashtag is LTSMG25. Like, share, and comment. And also put up your own posts, share your own content. The more coverage we can get from this event, the more effective we can be within the industry. So, without further ado, I want to invite our first presenter of the afternoon. I'm going to invite to the stage Bruce Roger. Bruce is from our host university, the University of Strathclyde. And Bruce is the Assistant Director of Cybersecurity and IT. Bruce is going to present to you on his own to begin with, but then he's going to be joined by a few select colleagues for some interesting conversation about, well, I don't know.
Stuff.
Bruce is going to tell you about that. Bruce.
Thank you. Right, here goes. Bit strange, isn't it? An AV specialist conference, and who do you get in to do the first big presentation? Someone that's not an AV specialist. So my plan was originally to talk about how the AV industry within universities has developed over the years. It's no longer a standalone thing. It's got to dovetail with all of the other services that we operate around. Not just the services, but the people need to work together. And then I'm going to bring in some of my esteemed colleagues, the subject specialists, for a discussion Q&A session. So a little bit about me. What gives me the right to talk to you guys? Because it's your specialism, not mine. So I started my IT career almost 4 decades ago as a mainframe sysadmin. Spent most of my career as a network professional, designing, building, fixing, and breaking networks, not necessarily in that order. And these days, I am responsible for the IT infrastructure across the university in its most general form. Server, storage, network, cyber, desktop services, audio, visual, stuff with wires on it. I'm also responsible for wireless as well. So if it's got wires or if it's got no wires, it's my bag. My daughter, my youngest daughter, when she was at primary school, was once asked, "What does your dad do?" And she thought about it for a while. And she said, "He's a fixing man, but he doesn't have a van." I've still not found a better job description. So, I should also say I asked Copilot to generate all the images for this presentation. I also asked Copilot how to cite these images to keep the copyright people happy. It said, put that on the slide. I asked Copilot for a suitable picture to go along with that statement. And it gave me one. I said, make it happier. And it gave me that one there. So that's how I got that picture. I've had a long involvement and interest in the audiovisual world, professionally and personally. I'm a musician. I'm not a particularly good one, but I'm a musician. I play in bands. I've done some sound engineering in the past. I've done some theatre lighting. I'm not fazed if confronted with the business end of a sound desk or a lighting console. And I know which end of an XLR is which. I'm heavily involved in community radio, more on the technical side than on the presenting side. I've built studios. I've commissioned transmitters on top of tower blocks, sometimes even legally. And also, the AV guys, they had the cool kit. You've seen it in the exhibition out there. The chat in their tea room was always better than the chat in the IT tea room. And for somebody like myself, who's into the tech, into the repair, into the fixing, into the building, having access to a workshop, having access to the specialist tools, the specialist test gear, and the people that knew how to use it, that was gold dust. At a professional level, I've been heavily involved in video conferencing since the 1990s, which is long before it became an overnight success. And networking and the AV people have always had an interest in getting video signals around a campus. the AV, the networking people's main interest was in stopping the AV people running yet more coax between buildings. Let's try and do it over the network. So, when you think of the AV technician from when I was a student, is that what you think of? An elderly chap in a brown overcoat, pushing a trolley with a projector down the corridor. When I was a student, this guy was called Raymond. Quite often he was a technician that maybe couldn't quite cut it in the research labs anymore, so he was pensioned off to the projector department. We had two other types of technician. We had the repair technician. Quite often these guys had trained in TV repair. They didn't get out of the workshop very much. They were kept chained to the desk. And then you got the young guy, the enthusiastic guy. I keep saying guy because it was always guys. Keen, enthusiastic. They attended the lectures, attentively listening to every word that the professor says. Just waiting for that key phrase. Next slide, please. We don't do that anymore, do we? Next slide, please, Matt. Today they've changed. Still male, still mostly male. Maybe a wee bit younger. Black combat bat trousers and a Leatherman. And this guy, he knows which way around his XLR goes. I've thrown some slides in here, which were things I was going to talk about, and then I thought, I don't have time to talk about this, but it's an interesting question. What do we call ourselves these days? Don't want to talk about it just now, but maybe it's one for the coffee afterwards. Are we technicians? I like the word technicians. It's somehow demeaning. Are we engineers? The engineering faculty wouldn't like us calling it that. What's our department called? We'll come back to that in a second. But moving on from what the technician was like 30, 40 years ago to today, the game has really changed. The responsibilities are completely different. We're no longer the guys that come along after the building is finished and screw the screen to the wall. We should be an integrated part of that design team. We are responsible for huge budgets. It used to be when I was designing a building, the network would be the biggest IT-like component of that cost. You were all in our teaching and learning building yesterday, which was completed 4 years ago. In that building, the AV budget was 3 times what the networking budget was. Estates don't say to us anymore, how much are you spending on networking? They say, how much are you spending on AV? But this had big implications, not only for the capital spend, but for the replacement and the maintenance budgets. Because back in the days of Raymond the technician, it was an overhead projector, it was a roll of acetate, it was a lamp, and a white painted wall. These days, we're installing tens and hundreds of thousands of pounds of equipment, and it has a fixed lifetime. That lifetime is not a long lifetime. I'm going to talk about budgets in a minute. But first, I'd like to introduce this guy, the lecturer. What on earth is he going on about? Why is there a horse in the lecture theatre? Why is he dressed? It's nothing to do with demanding money with menaces from students. But it's about the way we teach. Most of our teaching is still delivered via the traditional lectures, where we do this, where we stand and deliver. That was a joke. We stand and deliver. Is it the most effective way of imparting information? Well, there's really only 2 types of organisations in the world that teach that way, that deliver information that way. Universities are one of them. The other one's the church. It might be an effective way of delivering certain types of information, but I've got this niggle in my head that if it was so effective, then the sales and marketing people would be all over it, and they're not. So, the way we teach changes. But I'd like to do a wee digression. How much does it actually cost us, cost the student, to sit in that chair? Let's think about this end product, because the students are the end product of what we do. And I want to introduce a brand new concept here. You'll like this one. Bruce's dodgy arithmetic. It's got me through life, got me lots of benefits. We know how much it costs in tuition fees to be a student. We all know that, 9,000, whatever, yeah. But that's only a fraction of the actual real cost to be a student. You've got to live. You've got to have accommodation, food, clothes, occasional beer or two, a double decaf chocolate latte frapple, whatever. What do the students actually get for their money? Well, we, as people that work in universities, know they get lots of things. They get teaching services, they get tutorials, they get labs, they get libraries, they get exams, academic quality assurance, well-being and support. But the students don't see that. You ask any student, what do you get for your money? They'll say lectures. So we can do some. What does it cost to sit in that chair? We can take the total cost of being a student for a year, using this student logic that all they see is lectures, and we divide it by the number of teaching weeks in the year. You've got a number in your head now, haven't you? Divide that by the average number of lectures in a week, and you get the cost per hour to sit in that chair. It's going to vary from course to course. It's going to vary from person to person. But the cost per hour to sit in that chair is of the same order of magnitude per hour as to sit in the front stalls at West End Theatre, or to go to a Premiership football match, or the same price that my daughter paid to see Taylor Swift at Murrayfield last year. Difficult choice, isn't it? Wicked at the Apollo Victoria, Liverpool v Man U at Anfield, Taylor Swift at Murrayfield, Oasis at Wembley, or Professor Plum in Thermodynamics 101. Take your pick. But the key point I want to make, if a university lecture is costing the students the same amount of money per hour as a West End show, are we delivering the same production values? I don't think we do. Because there's lots of things that we'll have in a professional production on the stage that are alien to us in universities. A producer, a director, a team of stage technicians on hand during every performance, a stage manager. Sophisticated lighting and sound rigs, well, we can do that one. Resilient technical design, primary sound, backup sound, primary lighting, backup lighting. Not one radio mic on the principals, but two in case one breaks. All tested before every performance. Now, in the theatre, we can justify that because a cancelled performance in the West End is £100,000 in ticket refunds. And it's not just the technical side, it's the whole environment that maybe universities need to learn from. There are things that are commonplace in theatre that we don't even consider in universities. Things like rehearsals. When was the last time a lecturer came to you and said, I'm teaching psychology in room 27 next week. I don't know that room. I'd like to go and have a practice. What they usually do is they walk into the room, they look at the lectern, they look at the screen, they look at the students, say, does anybody know how to turn this thing on? We can do better. That's Bruce's dodgy arithmetic, and we're going to give you a different way to look at Bruce's dodgy arithmetic. We've established that it costs a lot of money to sit in that chair. This is one that you might be able to use yourself. I certainly have. Think now of your teaching spaces, your big teaching spaces, your 400-seat teaching spaces, your 500-seat teaching spaces. Multiply the price of sitting in that chair with that number of seats, with the number of hours in a working day. And that's the argument you need when you go to your funding committees and say, I want to spend £80,000 upgrading the audiovisual in a big lecture theatre. It's less than half a day's income by Bruce's dodgy arithmetic. I was going to say something about this changing skill set of the audiovisual technician, and this is maybe one for discussion later on. How's the technician changed over the years from the elderly guy in the brown overcoat? Previously, we might have focused on repair skills. We do interview tests, which are things about, do you know your resistor colour code? Do you know which end of a soldering iron is the hot bit? Have you got a ladder certificate, a scaffolding certificate? Can you drive the van? These days, we may be asking about things like UVIXA certifications. We might be saying, have you got a CCNA? Might be of more value than a City and Guilds and TV repair. We also place a much higher importance on customer service and skills because It's easier to teach tech than it is to teach nice. I was going to do something on where does your AV team sit in the organisation. This came from something on the mailing list recently. Is it a standalone part of a media services department? Is it part of IT? Is it part of your learning technologies? Is it part of your estates department? Part of your conference events, marketing comp? There's arguments to put it into all of these places. And does it matter? Well, I'd say yes, it does. Because it's not about the actual technology itself. It's about communications, familiarity, and trust. If you sit alongside the networking team, or the cyber team, or the estates team, or even share a tea room, you'll learn from them. You'll learn the good things, you'll learn the problems, and they'll learn from you. You'll learn about each other's needs, each other's desires, and each other's constraints and red lines. So who can you most usefully share information with on that list? I'm going to talk about some of the wider team people at the moment. As I said, we've all got our own needs, our own desires, our own constraints and red lines. We grumble and rant about the other bits of the service, don't we? The network people, desktop people, the estates people. And believe me, they grumble and rant about you guys just as much. They've all got needs and desires and constraints, and they're not going to be the same as yours. We need to know about what each other's requirements are. We need to be able to balance this out. So I'm going to talk about some of the areas individually. Networks. The network. I've got some networking specialists around. I used to be a networking specialist, but I've forgotten all the... These guys don't tell me the passwords anymore because I break things too often. I'll let you into a secret. The networking guys are jealous of you. They're really glad you're here because you're doing something that they've never been able to do. You're stress testing their networks. I can remember in the 90s specifying routers, evaluating routers, looking at their multicast performance. I had no use for that. A specification somewhere coming from JISC said, it's got to do this. It's only today that you guys are actually putting this into practice. What do you think the biggest traffic sources on our networks are these days? If you were to ask the person in the street, they might say, it's all the students surfing the web. No, it's not that. It's all the student record stuff. It's the payroll. No, nothing like that. Somebody might say it's the backups. And they could be right for a short window overnight. Is it the research computing? Because they've got huge bandwidth requirements, but it's niche, it's localized. If you'd asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have said the biggest continuous bandwidth user on the network is your CCTV network, because it's constant, it's a constant background, and for some of our remote campuses, it's 40% of the link load. But these days, it's AV over IP. And these things are stress testing the network in ways that we could never imagined. Because networking, it ain't simple. It used to be they were very simple. Your home networks are very simple. If you can do a network constrained to one room, it's simple. But with these complicated things, we've got VLANs. We've got all sorts of authentication protocols and access protocols. Your network guys, this is the bread and butter. They're doing this every day, all day. It's second nature. They think that way. But not to everyone else. There's complexity in here. Configuration and fault finding can be very challenging. It's essential to have the right tools and the right visibility. I've put a picture up there of, well, if it were yellow, it'd look like a fluke, but it's not. It's a CPC clone. It's not a voltmeter. It's not a multimeter. It's a network tester. Plug that into your network and it tells you interesting things like what VLAN am I connected to? What switch am I connected to? What port am I on? That's an essential tool for your AV technician these days. It's £700, but it's worth it. I'll give you a real example. That's our graduations. They had a prestigious event in Barony Hall. And we've got an AV over IP network in there to do the recording and the streaming and all this kind of stuff. Fairly simple fairly simple setup. 4 cameras, all connected at gigabit into the network, which is only connected to that building. And 4 links going out to that gigabit, going to a mixing desk and encoders and decoders and all the rest. And it had been in place for 2 years and it was working perfectly. And the conferencing people who organised the event came to us one day and said, at very short notice, we need to change the setup. This thing that happened here is now happening over there. Can you move that camera? No problem, we thought. Unplug it there, plug it in over there, and the whole thing fell in a heap. And it took quite a lot of diagnostics to work out why just simply moving that camera from there to there had caused the whole thing to fall over. Because the AV teams didn't have an insight into the network architecture behind this cloud. That's all they'd done. But let's look at what was behind the scenes. There were 2 switches in there joined at gigabit. These cameras had been configured, as you would do without thinking about it, configured to the highest possible quality. So each of these is streaming at 400 meg uncompressed. And that's all working fine. But as soon as you do that, you've got 1.2 gig trying to run down that sensor 1 gig link, and it all fell over. It's fixed now. But this was a lesson for us, that we need to give the AV teams the same insight into the network performance that the networking guys have. The tool we used for this, and I'm not going to get into it in detail, but this is something that there's been quite a lot of interest in, and we're talking about doing a power hour session on this product. We use a thing called AKIPS, and this is looking at every network switch across the campus. Jethro, how many are there? 700, 800, something like that? Yeah. So this is monitoring the traffic on every port, on every network switch, every few seconds. It's a huge amount of data. But what we're seeing here, this is actually nearly live data, because I took that snapshot about an hour ago for this room. And it's showing me the cameras in this room. There are 3 links in there, sitting at 11%, 10%, 10%. And you can see the different. If these were starting to get up to the 40, 50, 60, 80, 100, we could see that there was a problem. So we've arranged now for the AV team to have access to the bits of this that they need to have access to. It's still a tool that's used mainly by the networking guys, but the AV specialists have a view on it. More networky stuff. The Internet of Things, this blooming, it causes all sorts of problems. A lot of the cool toys that we get to put on our networks these days, a lot of the stuff that's on sale out there, hasn't been designed with the corporate network in mind. We've seen classroom deployments with equipment that needs specific network setups. You've got to have that thing, this parameter on the switch, switched on. We've also seen devices that say, I only work if this thing is switched off. And we're putting both of these things into the same room, so it's not plug and play anymore. 802.1x, do we all know what 802.1x is? Networking guys will. 802, it's the authentication process that sits behind EduRoam. It's a corporate networks authentication protocol. It's been around since 2001. EduRoam relies on it, so it's hardly new. But how often have you guys bought a product, tried it out and had problems? You take it to your networking guys and say, I can't get this to connect to EduRoam, but it works fine on my network at home. EduRoam's crap. What you actually should be thinking is, this works fine at home, this doesn't work in university, this doesn't connect to 802.1x authentication, it's not designed for a corporate network. We need to have that discussion at the development stage. I'll let that one sink in. So this is one of the strangest questions we've had at our help desk. It came from a student in the residencies. She logged a call saying, can you help me put my love box on the internet? So we had to go and do a little bit of Googling and find out what a love box was. So you can buy them on Etsy. It's a little wooden box. It's got a thing inside it which is driven by a Raspberry Pi. It connects to the Wi-Fi. And basically, If you can wake up in the morning and someone might have left you a message from your gran saying, I know you're still at university and you've gone away, but we still love you. And the little wheel in the front spins. But there was a demand to put it on the network. I'll talk briefly about the cyber side now. I've got some specialists on these areas that will come in the Q&A. But it's the same story. Devices coming onto the network which are not designed for the enterprise market. People trying to get the cool stuff to work when it was never designed to work on our network. Cyber's huge these days. You'll have seen the headlines. You'll know how much damage it can do to a university. A significant cyber attack to a university, the figures are it's going to cost £4 million. There was one at a university in Scotland last year, and yes, that's the figure in their annual report. This cyber attack cost us £4 million. So there are huge constraints and controls being applied to our teams by the universities and by the universities' insurers and their auditors to try and minimise that risk. And these constraints are perfectly understandable and reasonable. But for them to be effective, these controls have to apply to every device on the network, not just the corporate desktop. It's got to apply to the Internet of Things stuff. It's got to apply to the cameras, the audio processors. Have you seen the amount of kit out in that exhibition? Have you seen anything on it that's not got a network connection? These things have all got to be taken into account when you're doing your cyber strategy. I went into an institution, a couple of years ago, brand new build, and I was talking to the IT manager there and about cyber. And we're sitting in the cafe having a chat. And I said to him, how do you deal with Linux machines? And he said, oh, we don't have to worry about it. We don't have any Linux on site at all. Everything's Windows. Everything's managed. No Linux. I could see 6 from where I was sitting. There was a one LAN box all round. And he didn't appreciate that these were little Linux machines that also need managed in the same way as the desktop when you're in front of you. The desktop service, the end user computing, it's the same challenges as the network and the cyber teams have. It's got to be controlled. We put PCs into lecture theatres. They need to mirror the teaching environment. The software's got to be there. But they've also got to have the flexibility to accommodate all the other tech in the lecture theatres. They've got to have the flexibility to accommodate the random lecturer that comes in and wants to do something different. We've gotten away from the days where IT forced every computer to have a password, so the password was written on a post-it. We don't do that anymore, but yes, authentication is always going to be a problem. I've absolutely no idea what time it is. There's no clock in this room, and I don't have a clock on the screen here. But I think I'm doing okay for time. Yeah. One more slide here I want to talk about, and that's your virtual learning environments. A huge area. I'm not a specialist on it, but I've got somebody over here who is. And these are mostly his words. Initially, your virtual learning environments in your classroom were separate entities. They did not cross at all. And the audiovisual was for the room. The VLE was remote. But today it's all joined together. The VLE, excuse me, the VLE design needs to be integrated with your room design. The blending of your physical spaces and your digital spaces has to be one of your key design considerations. It's as important as where do I put this camera, where do I put these lights. We're in a hybrid world now, and we're no longer bound by these 4 walls. The audience could be here, the audience could be on the other side of the world, the presenter could be here, could be on the other side of the world. And Michael's words here, tools like Mentimeter means we can be getting real-time feedback from people wherever they are. The audience can become the presenter. It's no longer a standalone thing. And all these technologies that we're deploying, they all have to come together. And they've got to be easy. We've got to be able to work them. I was going to talk a little bit about AI, but then I thought, no, I don't have time for that. Surprised nobody's mentioned it already today. The only one quote I'll give you on AI is that I once heard somebody asking, did they think that AI was going to take their job? The answer we came up with was, it's very unlikely that AI is going to take your job. What's much more likely is that somebody who understands AI and knows how to use it will take your job. And I think that's a good point to introduce my panel of esteemed colleagues, because what we're going to do now is we're going to open the floor to questions. I've got 4 specialists here, and I want you to think of them as your friends. I want you to ask them the questions that maybe you've always wanted to ask your own specialists back at base, but maybe been a wee bit embarrassed to ask, or a wee bit scared to ask. So, guys, you want to come up and grab a chair? I'll do the intros. I've done little bios of them all. So, on this side, we've got Michael. So, Michael's from the University of Strathclyde, a learning technologist, a senior developer, and Moodle's his thing. He's also been heavily involved in doing the integrations between Moodle and Zoom. And a wee bit of useful information about Michael is, before he worked in this industry, he spent his formative years as a theatre sound designer, so some affinity with you guys, and an operator, and also working on a platform for serious games for lawyers. Over to the far side, we've got Gordon. Gordon's been with the university for 4 years now. He's a specialist in end-user computing, desktop computing. Before that, he was with DXC Technologies, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, providing IT support to someone who we can't talk about. Well, we could actually mention his name, but we'd have to kill you afterwards. Andy Laszlo. So Andy's a cybersecurity specialist, cybersecurity manager at the University of Strathclyde, where he'll tell you a bit about himself in a minute or two. But he's previously worked for a third sector company, and before that, he was an IT director in the further education sector, so big experience of delivering the type of services that we are interested in. And I'm also delighted to be joined by our networking guru. Give us a wave, Colin. So Colin's a visitor from Glasgow University. Colin Cooper has been doing networking for probably as long as I have, probably longer than I have. And network development manager at the University of Glasgow. It says here, because I've got AI to write a bio on him, he plays a pivotal role in overseeing the university's network infrastructure, ensuring its robustness and reliability to support the institution's academic and research activities. ChatGPT also told me that Colin's a renowned medical researcher and a famous sci-fi author, but ChatGPT is wrong. So, what time is it? We'll get 20 minutes for questions. Is there anything you'd like to pose to these special guys? Learning technologist, network, cyber, end-user computing. Do we have any questions? There must be, because I planted one earlier on. Someone in the back row, I wonder what you could be going to ask us. Hey.
It's terrible.
There we go. Right, let me get my question again. You mentioned a little bit around corporate networks, and can you go a little bit more into how you secure devices on the network and any best practices that you follow? You want it again?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Okay. Are you paying attention this time, yeah? Right, one last time. You mentioned a little bit around corporate networks. Can you explain how you approach securing your AV devices on the network and what best practices you should follow?
I'll take that as a cyber manager. First thing, don't turn it on, okay? Put it back in the box, and then let's plan this out. But I suppose kind of working in cyber, we're kind of paranoid by nature in cyber, and that means that we see threats like new devices coming on the network. It's threats, and sometimes it's with good reason. Like Bruce said around some of the major cyber attacks, it's been using almost vulnerable devices that are lingering on networks that then kind of uses that foothold to get in and then to start doing more damage on the network. So I think kind of first and foremost it's about Bruce discussed around the planning of things, and kind of taking it right back to the start. If it's like procurement, get the network team involved, get kind of cyber team involved, end user compute team involved, because everyone's going to get a part to play. but there's also, there's things that they're going to want to know in terms of the network and the authentication of it that Bruce kind of talked about with 802.1x. In terms of treat the devices as a normal computer, as a laptop or a PC. It's likely it's running either Linux or it's Raspberry Pi in there or kind of an Android system. So these need to be updated. They need to be supported by the vendor, or that causes issues with certifications. Like the IT teams will want to kind of have your Cyber Essentials Plus accreditation. So make sure it's supported with the vendor. Follow the best practice of the vendor as well in terms of that configuration, and that may mean a little bit of RTFM, but hey ho, that's kind of what we have to do, and get them secured, update them, and also then register them in your whatever asset management system that you've maybe kind of got there on your net or in your university. Because then that means that allows cyber to then scan those devices and look for vulnerabilities, and then can help you out with with understanding the kind of threat that's involved there. I'm just looking to call on the network and
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. The phraseology that would come from the networking side of people would probably be some form of microsegmentation to start with, where you're saying this does that. We will put it in a pool of devices that do that, and then we will try to make sure that only the services that it needs are available to it or from it. That sounds easy in biggish words. It's actually quite difficult to achieve. One of the major issues that you face in the type of environment that you're in and that we're in is that while it's very easy to be the cyber and say no, there's a bit that goes, it's got to work. So often it's that kind of compromise situation that says we maybe have to start where we don't really want to be. But the important thing, and we can't stress it again and again and again, is all about dialogue. The earlier everyone starts talking, the more likely we are that we will end up with a solution that we can then take forward together. Many of the issues that we see in this industry, in the networking side of it, I imagine translate across. I'm not an AV person, but we deal with the same sort of issues that Bruce has very elegantly brought up during his talk. So it is that there's a good degree of pragmatism needed, and often networking has spent a lot of time in a pragmatic position because for many years we were the people who were on the ground finding the thing that someone had bought that needed to work for the institution to make money, and it wasn't. And to come back very finally to your point there, I have a mental picture of like chicken wire that you're putting around things, and the objective is to try and get a smaller mesh in the chicken wire, but to still let the thing that you really need to get in or out, or else it's just not going to work. But it is dialogue, and more dialogue.
And just following on from what Colin's saying there, some of the issues that we see, and this is issues because of budget, because of kind of many issues, procurement and stuff, is that you see lots of kind of older AV equipment on networks, and they're no longer supported. So that means that if cyber find a vulnerability on those devices, which is very, very likely, if it's not supported, then the vendor can't provide a patch to update that. And that means that then there's a kind of, well, we can't run that in the network, or we have to segment that kind of off and try and get it away from the production network. So, you start to run into those issues, and that's kind of where it can get a bit kind of touchy. But it's normal. It's kind of what you see quite a lot on the network.
I would maybe just jump into that. All of that applies to your software as well. Don't forget, you've got software running on all these devices as well. That skepticism that you apply for it needs to be applied to those things. We get teachers going, we want to use this cool piece of software on top of these things. All those rules about how you trust that cybersecurity thing applies to them. And a lot of that is about making sure all your technicians and support people have that skeptical sort of mindset about it from the outset. Because they're the first people at the boundary who will say, we need to look at that in a bit more detail. Is it reputable? Is it something that we can institutionally roll out? Is it corporate enough to do that? Most people will accept those things, that there's maybe a lead time for that because we are potentially quite much more vulnerable.
Yeah, I think I hate when when people say to me, we can't do this because of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity gets this image of stopping people doing things. I don't like that image. What I want to say is the cyber people are going to help us do this safely in a way that meets the university's risk management frameworks.
Thank you.
Right. Any more questions?
Sorry, I've grabbed the mic, so you'll just... sorry, Greg. Beat you to it. Just following on from that, the implication is there's conversations happening, but in my institution, it's very difficult to have a conversation with anybody in networks. And it's not because you're not interested, it's you're busy. So it's, even if we do a project that we have estates and ourselves and a whole load of other people, it's often networks that don't turn up because they're busy. So how do your institutions have those conversations, and do you actually have those conversations, or is this just a good little bit of chat? And kind of on a side thing about being able to plug any device in and trace it, our network, all our network ports are live. I don't understand that. Why are ports that are not being used patched into switches, and is that something that you do as well?
You want to go first on that one, Colin?
I was going to start by suggesting some bribery, but that sounds like a bad place to be. Your point is actually excellent. All parties involved in these dialogues are extremely busy, and but the important thing really is that they will get a better result with less time being wasted on it if we get the dialogue going earlier, and that is extremely hard to achieve. I think Bruce's point about where AV sits in the organisation and its relationship with estates and IT in particular is really, really crucial here. And I don't have a panacea answer. I'm not going to stand here and say that we do not have that same issue. It's what do you mean there are 70 amplifiers going in and it's going in the comms room and we just don't have the rack space for it? Those are really difficult things to try and trap off.
Yeah. I think another thing that really helps is coffee. Seriously, coffee. Talk to people.
That's what I was going to say. I think it is absolutely. It's a lot of effort. So we run the VLE service at the university. We have almost weekly conversations with our infrastructure team about things that are happening, even just ideas that are happening. But it takes a lot of work. There's conversations happening today with people like Campbell about projects that might be a couple of months off into the future. They're just embryonic just now, but keeping that dialogue open, even at a low, not management level, but just even that operational level between even the techs who can have that conversation and just go, is a really useful but really hard thing to find to carve that time out to. But we found that sort of approach of being promiscuous actually really helps when it then turns into, right now, the management's coming into the conversation and all the obstacles that brings into some of that. But it's a lot of work, and I think we spend a lot of time talking to people. It's like, keep talking, nobody explodes.
And the other thing to bring in, and this depends on the size of the project that you're running, but to procurement, being involved helps these days, because there's a whole kind of thing around cyber about the supply chain being secure, and in terms of that can be contracted. So it's a case of, it's like, we want this, we want these kind of 100 projectors and things like that, but we want this to be supported for 5 years or 7 years. We want updates to be patched, kind of thing. We want a remote system that will allow us to kind of remotely patch this. We wouldn't have to go in and visit individual devices. So really kind of try and get, in procurement, I would expect to find they'll be open to this, they'll be wanting to improve on this. But getting them involved allows it to then to be written into contract, which again just saves a lot of effort, a lot of time up further on if you do this up front.
Greg, you ready?
Thanks. This is brilliant. Thank you very much for this. But if I was going to play this back to you, what I'm hearing is like there's an inconvenient truth here, is that although you guys are into IT and numbers and the inconvenient truth is that this is a nuanced kind of thing. There's a lot of issues of collaboration. There's all sorts of grey areas here. You know, to me, I can see that between you guys, you've got a huge, you know, body of knowledge and information. You know, how is this captured and how is this parsed and how do you process and use that to create the processes that you need to you know so that we can all move forward with this?
It's a challenge, isn't it?
I was going to say,
Yeah.
so I've been in Strathclyde for 10 months, so it's maybe not the best about process.
Yeah, it's a challenge. One of the challenges we face is we all speak different languages. You'll have been to our sports centre yesterday. You'll have looked at the audio system in there, and Campbell or Ian or Stuart will have described the speakers on the wall as being running power over Ethernet using Dante. That doesn't mean much to the networking people. Describe to them it needs to be a multicast enabled network. It's a different way of saying the same type of thing. So we've got to establish this, if not establish a common vocabulary, at least have a realization of the limitations of our own specialist vocabulary and how to translate it into the other person's world.
I think one of the things that we've done, and I've been at university for a number of projects, so one thing we have always found helpful as a technique is at the start of this project, it actually is writing, what's the glossary of terms before you start it? And it's a really mundane activity, and I've now written, I think, 6 different glossaries for different projects, but it gives you that shared artifact at the outset, like Bruce says, to say, when I talk about, and this is when I talk about a student, we have 4 definitions for students at these universities. We have our credit-bearing students, we have our non-credit-bearing students, and we have our CPD-type ones. So having that terminology from the outset just really helps create an artifact that you can work around. And it does mean you can come back and say, this is something we hadn't considered. And it just, and but it is ephemeral. It's there for the process of getting the job done. And I think it is one of those things that you can't just do once. It needs to be applied for the problem you're kind of solving. But it is a technique that sort of, it really helps concentrate the mind. And if you get all the right stakeholders in the room, it is, yes, everybody should be able to translate.
I think what we're seeing in the more old way of these things being done is you get to know the person who's going to have to do it for you and make sure that your friend. And that's the old way of doing it, but it actually is extremely effective.
Yeah, I used to always say that chocolate biscuits work better than memos.
Yes, it is, as bribery comes back into this in quite a big way. But it's finding that these are the people who are going to be impacted by my thing, or I have a pretty strong suspicion that my thing is going to break their thing, and I need to know that it's going to fly. And the really sad ones are the ones where at REBA stage 500, we're discovering there's something that nobody's thought about, and that realistically happens. It's not completely alien and unknown. And I think we're probably, the impact of this arena on the networking arena is in its infancy, really. You will more than we have done notice the change from analog to digital, and that change is colossal, and it will just keep going. And the impact on the stress testing, I think that's a really good point. Is please be aware, this is an area where the misconfiguration of a device will be probably much more impactful than almost anything else. Yeah. And that dialogue, I keep coming back to its dialogue, it's finding the right person at the right time, and the earlier the better.
Hi, thanks. I wanted to ask a couple of questions about two of the themes that have come up so far. The stress testing bit, great. I'm glad we're pushing the networks hard for you guys. That's brilliant. I think we're about to take that a little bit further over the next 2 to 3 years. There are a couple of trends that are emerging that make that more likely that we have to think about that a little bit more carefully again. So I wanted to talk about the chicken wire particularly, which was the idea that that micro-segmentation to be able to create that secure operating environment, to be able to evaluate and to be able to protect and manage risk is conceptually where we are, I think, about the introduction of new technologies, new devices, new thinking around how signal flow might traverse network topology buildings, etc. But the drive at the moment, so that if you think of it as a spectrum of practice, that what we've got is some replacement technologies. The next step is about interop, and the next step is about how you have open principles and standards for that interop between AV devices. So if you look at 2110 and then the subset for AV, which is emergent IPMX, and how that's going to work, it hinges on having some discovery stuff that sits somewhere, and then you traverse all of those little bits of segmentation that we've nicely set up to create our protocol separation, but it wants to discover across all of those different protocols. So if you're looking at convergence as a almost inevitable outcome of this trajectory, that you're going to look at, I've got my audit, it might be a Dante amp in a sports centre, but actually that's going to be part of a broader ecosystem that is dependent on convergence. How do you plan for that?
I'll leave at this point. I think that I'm trying to say here, the general theme there maps quite nicely onto what the network vendors are busily trying to sell us at the minute as being the latest and greatest, which we'll go back to in a second. The reality, of course, with a lot of these things is they're always trying to sell you the latest and greatest, and I'm sure AV suffers from exactly the same thing. You've got to pick, this is the latest and greatest that's going to work, versus this was the one that got them a few world cruises and came to an end. But the concept that you end up in very abstract terms with your network is one gigantic big single switch which is controlled. It's basically fabric is the word to look out for in our terminology, in our area. And then the whole thing becomes policy driven. And the bit that you've elegantly described fits quite neatly actually into that idea that the policy discovery part, which says you are some form of multicast encoder for the video stream. I can tell that's what it is, therefore it gets this downloaded to the switch and it's dynamic. Sounds like we're heading in the same direction, which is great. The reality is going to be that somewhere along the line they won't talk to each other and we'll end up in an absolute dog's dinner, as it always is. But it's fascinating to realize that it's a use case which reinforces the fact that perhaps this fabric-based model with policy driven towards the edge is actually going to have some real hooks and be of value somewhere, because it is very much the case that you want to know what it is there. Cyber is going to get stronger, not weaker, in a more, they're going to get more aggressive policing us. And this maybe offers us a method of moving forward. But this is going to be, I come back to again, this is really going to be dialogue. This is going to be quite complicated to deploy, potentially very liberating, because the co-op point about the switch ports are all open and things like that. Well, they won't be, because you plug the thing in and go, what are you? No, you're not doing that. Or, oh yes, I recognize you're a camera control subsystem. I will let you do camera control subsystem things.
I think it's the irony that all the hardware is going to be solved by software problems.
We've got a couple of minutes left, I think. Yeah, a couple of minutes. So time for one more question.
Going on back up part of what Marcus said, but also, I mean, earlier you said you felt that it was in its infancy. I disagree. I'd say it's probably a grumpy teenager at the moment. I think we've moved on from the infancy piece. You talked earlier on about how we have to kind of create a shared language between these pieces. And it seems to me that from where I'm sitting that we've learned a lot at the Royal College of Physicians working on projects where we've opened doors to the IT team to see things they hadn't seen before, and both for the AV team to learn new bits. So we talked to the AV team about layer 2 and layer 3 in ways that we probably never needed to before. What would you recommend teams like us do, A, to encourage appropriate training of AV staff, and on the flip side, what AV training do you think would help the network and the cybersecurity teams to find a way of constructing that shared language? Because there seems to be learning on both sides that would help.
Who wants to take that one?
I think for us, one of it's been a side effect of more of the physical setup. We unified our help desk at the university to one point of contact. Yeah. So it does mean that in the VLE team, every so often we will get the email saying, I need this projector fixed in a lab. So again, the exposure to that is, again, it's not so much training, but exposure to you're part of that bigger machine. And actually, if you can't answer it, you really should know where within the institute it happens. And that's something that we've kind of learned organically from being exposed to that fire hose and being able to pass those tickets around and seeing the history of them. So it's not so much a formal introduction, but actually just that awareness of working across those things. And so especially video streaming is a good example. Most of our video streams are consumed by our students in the VLE. When that breaks, it's us that get the call about it. Nothing to do with the, where that video is being hosted, where it's platformed, whether it's, something on those sort of things. So again, I think it is that sort of all our niches, they're less independent, I think, than ever before. And I think it's really difficult to create one form of training for that. There's a lot of experience that is gained. But I think it is an important one to see that sort of bigger picture for that. And we've tried to engage all our staff with the other teams in that conversation. Again, it's hard to say you can teach somebody that sort of skill set, I think. But I think having it all go through one place instead of everybody just in their little world does make a big difference, just in seeing that information flow and actually seeing where it's gone wrong. Actually, why have we ended up with a ticket about a projector not working? Well, it's because they tried to present the VLE on the screen, so they think it's a VLE problem. And that's then the conversation, okay, how do we turn that into an SOP or a process or procedure so that actually in the room, when they see, oh, the projector's not working, what they do, and then does enough information come through in the call to, again, encode it into the processor. So it's not, we're not just relying on people having those skills. We actually try and change the process to give us some hints, as it were, to get in that way. That maybe only answers part of the question.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's about communications as well. I've not met, okay, I was going to say I've not met a network engineer so far, but what I actually mean is I've not met a good network engineer who will not talk at great length about their specialism. They love talking about this stuff, if you ask the right questions, and if they've got an appreciative audience. All right, Colin? Yeah. So if you want to know about this stuff, talk to your networking guys. They will be... Do your homework. Find out some of the basics. Words like multicast. Have an idea what it's about, or ask them to explain it to you. Because if you're using protocols like Dante, it all relies on multicast. And multicast for years was a curiosity for us, Colin. It's something we... In
many ways, yeah.
We turned on, and the only time we ever used it was when NASA threw up a spaceship and they started streaming. And
they don't do that.
They don't do that anymore.
No,
but it's becoming much more common.
For us, I mean, you will find quite commonly multicasting is something your network people are going to look at with scant eyes. They're going to find that one a horror. It's take everything you know and turn it upside down. It's a very difficult arena to debug without kind of stepping back from it. I don't have something to say on, I can't think of a good answer on how you do the training. Bruce's pointing out the tool set. The methodologies of fixing things are fairly common across our industries. You know, it's broken, right? Well, that bit's working, this bit's working. It must be the bit in the middle or of that type of thing. But I think one of the more interesting bits to go to from the AV thing is probably go out and buy the Fluke. Yeah. Those sort of tools are quite...
Don't buy the Fluke, buy the one at CPC at half the price.
Yeah, it's got a huge tariff. Oh no, we won't go into that. But just having the tool set, and they're not terribly expensive and very useful diagnostic little tools anyway.
The fact you plug it into the socket and it tells you what switch you're connected to, you're on port 27 and you're in VLAN 105. Yeah, I've got power over Ethernet, yeah. I'm happy. Are we done now? I've just realised, one more question about Victoria. She's probably going to say, Gordon's not said anything.
How far back we go? Just there.
Thank you. So my question is around the communication piece, and
If I use the analogy that Michael mentioned earlier on around software requests and the process that we go through that. In my institution, that's a fairly standardised process. I know I've got to do my financial checks. I know I've got to engage with procurement. I know I've got to speak to the DPO. And there's a bundle of. I've got a checklist. I know, broadly speaking, within each of those elements, the questions I need to answer for each of those areas. When I apply that to the AV side of things, I have absolutely not the slightest clue what network needs to know from me to be able to make the correct decision. I have no idea from my cyber team what set of questions they have. If I could have a process that allows me to work through all of those stages, I know what the questions are in advance, I'll fill it in and I'll tell you all that. I'll go off and I'll do the legwork and I'll bring it over to you and say, can you take a look at that and tell me whether or not it's suitable? And you'll come back and you'll say yes or no, and then we'll have a conversation about it. But I don't think the process for this side of things that makes it transparent, the type of conversations we need to have, is there at this point. So what is the opportunity for us to come together and build a framework for that conversation and to think about how we might standardise the approach of the communication between the various groups that don't have a common language all of the time, because things are evolving at such a pace that we feel like we're constantly running to catch up. So is that something this group could think about? Is how do we start to build out that language and build out that structure and build out a process that might work across our institutions? Over to you.
That's a fantastic idea.
This
group.
I was just going to say, I think we've had we've had a lot of experience with software, and I think with cyber like that, and I think it's, can we transplant those lessons we learned from doing software procurement and risk from effectively our desktop PCs and things like that, where we can, and our end users can see what they're asking for, what they want to do. It is a demystification. You know, that there's another layer of abstraction that all the AV stuff is. It's hardware. There's other things that are mediating in between there, which most people don't see. So it's almost that Wizard of Oz lifting that curtain. And actually, yes, we do need to try and find that sort of what's the pro forma for commissioning something. Now, some of these things I think probably sits within really big projects, which is quite different maybe from like I need a piece of software on my desktop. But the principles I think should be the same, and it's working through that. And what can we systematise? And things like that. And
this is a conversation Colin and I were having privately there is, where does this sit? Is it within LTSMG? Is it a USISA thing? It doesn't sit in any well-defined area, which means it sometimes falls through the gaps.
I say, you're probably well versed in terms of, we go through that process of how do we get software. What can you share for people with that process?
Yeah, well, something we've introduced for the academic year is we have a software request form where request what software you need for the academic year, but when it comes to new AV solutions and stuff, we don't really do it the same way, so it's probably something we need to look at, because when a new AV solution comes in, we maybe only find out kind of later on, there's software associated with this, and then we need to try and figure out, does this actually comply with like cyber essentials and the likes of that? So yeah, you're right, we probably could do better at integrating a bit earlier in the process, because it could go through procurement and all the rest of it before it gets to us. Software request form is probably the way to go. If we could do something like that standardised.
There's a little bit extra, if it's okay, if we have time, and that's how do we build a shared risk profile understanding across the groups? Because I think that's the other aspect to it is, I know what my risk appetite is, but do I know what each of the individual element risk appetites are there? And how do we build that out as well? Again, it's another communication piece, but I don't think we do it very well.
I'm glad you asked that really at the end when we ran out of time. Fantastic question, Victoria. And we'll grab a coffee afterwards.
Cool.
We're running out of time just now, but we'll be here for the rest of the afternoon. We'll be delighted to keep this conversation going.
Fantastic. Let's give a big thank you to Bruce and Terry. Thank you very much for joining us. I think Reba Stage 500 is one I'm putting in the bank and taking home with me, so yeah, love that. Fantastic. Okay, it's time to move swiftly on to our next presentation. And we've got a member case study coming up for you. So we are going to be joined by Thomas Cullen, who's the AV manager at Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. Thomas has recently migrated to the UK from New Zealand, where he worked in the film and TV industry before studying IT and then transitioning to AV in higher education. And Thomas is going to talk to us about the Creator Building, new building in Malawi for the university. So, Thomas.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou katoa. My name's Thomas. I'm AV manager at LSTM. And yeah, I'm here to talk about the Creator Building. It was an international AV integration project. Just want to preface that the project itself was totally MLW, the Malawi Liverpool Wellcome Trust. It was their baby, their project. We were acting in a kind of consultative, supportive manner in partnership and collaboration with them. So yeah, that's good. Now myself, like a lot of people in the industry I've learned, I have an artistic background. I used to play in a lot of bands and things, solo as well. Sometimes that paid the bills, sometimes it didn't, so I had to diversify my income at times. If you can see, I tried to find some serious photos of me doing old jobs, but I just couldn't. So I worked for a time as a cabinet maker, making kind of bespoke furniture for a few years. And I also worked as a chef as well. I studied and worked in film and TV. So I studied at AUT in Auckland, film and television. And then I worked in the film and television industry in New Zealand for a few years behind and in front of the camera. I did quite a few different roles. I did some sound technician stuff. I did some videography. I did some scoring short films. I kind of did a little bit of everything, trying to find what flavor suited me best. And then COVID happened, and then some kids happened. And I thought, well, I should probably get a stable job. So I studied IT, changed careers. Then I moved here in 2022. And first job I applied for was LSTM. I got it, and I started the first line support, so resetting passwords and all that awesome stuff. And then there became a need for some AV specific, because we had a few new installations going in that needed that support, and so I kind of transitioned to an AV technician, the AV manager, and this project was part of my transition into that latest role. So the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, so it's the oldest institute dedicated to tropical medicine, established 1898, I think London School colleague. There's a bit of contention there about who's the OG tropical medicine school. And that came about mostly because of the trade at the time, shipping and things. Liverpool was a big port city, so they'd get all their sailors and things coming back with interesting diseases that they'd never seen before. And so this guy, Sir Alfred Lewis Jones, and I think a few other business people, I think he was a shipping kind of magnate type guy, put in £350, I think, per annum to start the tropical school. And and that's how it was born. LSTM primarily, deals with things like tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, malaria, dengue fever, and that one's always hard to say, lymphatic filariasis. Hopefully the lecturers won't be watching this later. We're not a huge school, so we attract about 600 odd students from 68 countries. We have global hubs and things. It's mostly focused on research, so we have more of a research, scientific and commercial arm than a education arm. So it's a bit different in that sense. And we have global partnerships like, for instance, MLW. So MLW is the Malawi Liverpool Wellcome Trust, premier research institute in any low-income country worldwide. It was set up in 1995 by the late Malcolm Molyneux. It's governed by the MLW Governing Council, and there's a memorandum of understanding between Kamuzu University of Health Sciences, which is in Malawi, LSTM, and University of Liverpool. And like any good research endeavour, it has a very creative acronym. So the CREATOR stands for the Clinical Research Excellence and Training Open Resource. And so I was more concerned with the TOR aspect, the training open resource aspect of it. And I thought I'll just play a video because this is probably, these guys are best at explaining the background and everything.
A few years ago, when I was having a chat with Stephen Gordon, he had this vision of an impressive building which would change the way we conduct postgraduate training for clinicians and basic scientists.
25 years ago, there were 4 researchers in MRW. I was one of them. Today there are 750. We have 157 actually projects in 13 research groups, but without doubt the largest research institution in Malawi. We've seen massive reductions in the death rate from malaria among children. We've seen a huge increase in vaccination. We've seen the arrival of HIV diagnosis and antiretroviral therapy. We've seen life expectancy of Malawians go from 45 years to 60 years. So there have been enormous improvements, but there's still a great deal of work to do.
We want to perform cutting-edge research here in Malawi. And some of the stuff we include, for example, monitoring outbreaks, because we're going to have sequencing facilities. We want to do studies, which we have been doing for years now, but to take them a step up, monitoring how vaccines work, so vaccine efficacy and vaccine effectiveness. And why is that important? It's important because it helps us design better vaccines, as well as improve the vaccines that we have. And the third aspect of it, we are interested in training the next generation of scientists.
As a vector biologist, one of the key things that I need is an insectary, which we currently do not have. So without an insectary, we cannot grow as a vector biology group because we fail to study mosquitoes and other vectors that cause different vector-borne diseases.
So when I think of CREATOR, I think of opportunities, I think of high-powered research, I think of an opportunity to excel, I think of an opportunity to get a good education.
So we can't really wait for these new innovative buildings and the discovery that's going to happen behind those walls of CREATOR.
So having cutting-edge technology in country is actually a plus for Malawi because we'll be able to do the science that we need in country, training the scientists we need in country without the need for sending samples or even people to go outside to do things that we can do here.
I see this as a big opportunity to be able to develop a group of young scientists who go forward to conduct research that's relevant for Malawi.
The buy-in from the Malawian community will be important for Malawians to value CREATOR as a flagship and as something the country can be proud of as the greatest research institute in the region. And so it would be ideal if we had 5 significant Malawi donors, either individuals or institutions or communities, and about 200 million participants that would come together and be the Malawi ownership of this project.
It's extremely important that we create an environment that will enable clinicians to do high-quality research by offering the appropriate infrastructure, but also the support in terms of materials that they might need to be able to do that high-quality research.
Yeah, so that's background really. Now, so my kind of part of it in that supportive role was working with the local team and trying to determine how we're going to approach the AV integration. They had some facilities there already in their existing building. They had 2 kind of rooms, but they were quite difficult for them to service. So, and at LSTM, my department, IT Services, had only just recently kind of inherited ownership of the learning spaces. So it was a big learning curve for us as well. And we had to make sure we're engaging with all the key stakeholders in Malawi and making sure that they were driving the AV design and everything. And when we're looking at logistics, because obviously it's over in sub-Saharan Africa, it's quite far away. We've never done a big project before, especially that far. So we looked at a few different options. I think this was from one of my first kind of, when I was trying to figure out how to do this thing. So it was either going to be, some procuring in the UK, doing the build in the lectern here, programming, all that stuff. So it's just ship it over and then hang and bang. That was kind of the most priciest one, but probably would have been the easiest. Then we had a mixture of that, so procuring things here, but then sending it over to the local integrator to do all the builds and programming and all that stuff as well. There were some kind of pros and cons to that. Bit cheaper because the stuff there was quite a bit more expensive buying it in country. Not knowing the integrators, so not having worked with them, not know what their work's like or standards or anything. And then the other one was just everything over there, so local procurement and integration, which was bit of a gamble. But so we kind of went with 1B pretty much. That was what we ended up with. And the first thing to do was to go to Malawi. So went over for a site visit. There's my little plane. I think that was coming out of Joburg. Got on one of these little air links. And the next one here, so you can see it was quite a haul. It was Manchester to Dubai to Joburg to Blantyre, so 4 different airports. I think 19 hours in the air total, so quite a long one. Basically almost the same time it takes me to get back home to NZ. And then over there you can see Malawi, just kind of like southeast Africa there. And I put the UK there in green, you can see, and then the New Zealand just for a bit of a flex there next to that one. And so Lake Malawi is a big important part of it. So it's kind of borders Zambia, Mozambique, Tanzania, 20% of Malawi's area. Very big lake, home to the most species of fish when it comes to one single body. And yeah, chumbo and chips. So even in Malawi, I still managed to get fish and chips. Coming over in the plane, I got some overhead shots. Lots of Malawi is like this. It's very rural. Most of their economy is built on agriculture, and it's all, dirt roads and things. It's but beautiful kind of countryscape. You just see maize everywhere for miles and miles and miles. So I came in here to Chileka International Airport, little airport in Blantyre, actually. The town's called Malawi, and that's So I got in there and see the Malawi Liverpool Welcome Program logo there. Get picked up in one of these bad boys every day, which is the early 90s Toyota Land Cruiser, which we've got lots of in New Zealand. So it was actually quite nice seeing one of these because I hadn't seen one for years. Beautiful vehicle, very good for the African countryside, but none of them had any aircon, unfortunately. So it was a bit toasty. And then, my accommodation, I had kind of these little deer friends running around in the backyard. So it was really a different world going there, but I'm glad I got to experience that. And when I got there, I could see that the building was very much in progress. I think this was at the 3rd year of breaking ground. There, the creative building. And so we kind of went on this initial trip to map all the power and data and things. So you can see kind of in the background there, Dean Smith. He's the IT manager, head of IT at LSTM. And so we went through and checked out all of the rooms to see how we were going to do it, because it was all a bit after the fact. So we're trying to figure out what we were going to do after the building had already kind of started. You can see Mount Mulanje there in the background. So it's quite a beautiful place. And and there on the roof, there is Samad Ibrahim. He's like the network guy at MLW, and Owen Winifumbo in the middle. He's the IT manager, and Wiza Mango on the right there. He's kind of IT operations. And that was their existing building, the Malcolm Molyneux Learning Centre. So this is kind of the setup that they have over there in their teaching spaces. They've only got 2, mind you. It's a divisible room. So they kind of had, like an ATEM Mini and things, and they've got their IP camera controller and their handheld mics, and really good quality video and audio, but very people intensive. So for every class and every session, they basically had to have 1 or 2 people manning that. So imagine if at one of your unis you've got 500 rooms and you needed 1 or 2 technicians for each room. It's not really manageable. And because they're expanding, what they wanted to explore was being able to not have to have that kind of support for every session. I tried to get a decent photo of their rack. I didn't really. You can kind of see the room and the reflection, but you see they've got a mixing desk there and some wireless receivers. So, and they did really well with all this stuff because they never really had a budget for AV or anything in the whole 25 years. So they kind of like were very resourceful and really good at pumping out some quality AV. And then that was us at the end of our trip. In the middle there, this guy from Logicalis, he came over from the UK as a network consultant. And then Godka on the side there, they were the network kind of engineers. Yeah, and so the building, basically, we had a flexible learning space in the top left there, the lecture theatre in the right, the poster discussion area, some corporate meeting rooms as well, more corporate meeting rooms, and that round room there on the left, that was quite an interesting room, see a bit later, which was going to be kind of their main executive type meeting room, and a few more corporate meeting rooms there as well on the 4th floor, and then one more at the top. So in terms of the site visit and going there, I thought it was absolutely crucial, mostly because there was only so much I could get from drawings and things, and it was also really good to meet them and properly engage with the people at MLW because the culture is quite different and the working culture is quite different. And I thought it was important to learn more about that, their culture, how they work, so that we can really collaborate as effectively as possible. And yeah, we found a lot of critical issues that weren't on drawings and things. One of them was in the lecture theatre, this changed later, but initially they told us we couldn't affix anything to the wall because of structural issues. And I was like, oh, well, I guess we won't have any screens then. So stuff like that came out of actually being there and talking to the engineers. And yeah, so we decided to break it into 2 phases. We were going to do the meeting rooms, digital signage first, then the lecture theatre later. And this is kind of all came from them with MLW really, was they want to standardise their estate, establish operational equity with us in Liverpool because essentially we were going to have a bi-directional kind of teaching, experience. Hopefully that's kind of part of the idea. So making sure that they're on the same level as it were as us over here. Having minimal user effort so that the lecturers just have to walk in like a lot of the ones here do, I guess, and just have to, press source and then they can just go. Yeah, remote support for them, automation as much as possible, and having a converged network straight off the bat because the new building, they had all new network infrastructure. So we thought, well, let's just do a converged network from the beginning, and then they don't have to worry about untangling, AV networks and trying to reintegrate, which is what we're doing at the moment, try to reintegrate them later. Yeah, so it was quite modest budget. There was not that much because the requirements 5 years ago, which is when it was conceived, were quite a bit different to the requirements post-COVID and everything like that. So because the technology had advanced so much and the demand and everything like that, the initial budget was quite a lot less than that. And then, but we managed to get it up to about there, which if you look at those requirements is pretty modest and you're trying to do that over on a different continent. So it was a bit challenging, but we got around them. So we ended up getting local contractors from South Africa, people that service South Africa, Omega Digital. They'd done quite a lot of work, big building with Deloitte and things, so they supplied everything for the meeting rooms. And then AVC, which were based out of South Africa, they were going to do the lecture theatre. And yeah, a lot of that was just because we didn't really have any integrator support or any kind of support at all. So we're just trying to figure out like, oh God, how do we find people and how do we do this in, sub-Saharan Africa? But all it was just a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails and just poking around in the dark and eventually finding someone that says, you know, oh yeah, I can do program Extron, sure. And then so, yeah, that's where we got to. So for the lecture theatre, the drawing's a bit crude, so I think it might have even been my first one. So we did it with the MLW guys. The main requirement was being able to have a PC source, a wireless source, and a laptop source. That was the main thing. Dual display and being able to have the hands-free microphones and stuff for video conferencing. So we built it all around the Extron UCS303, which I think had come out not long before we started doing the project, which was a really good solution. It meant I could switch between all three and the peripherals over USB as well. So whatever they had running, it could run the call and everything. And we tried to do it, because of our limited budget, we tried to make something that could be easily scalable later, which we'll be doing maybe next year. So yeah, phase one was late July. The president was booked to come to the opening, so we couldn't really delay it. So there was a lot of rushing. I think it was February or March that year I picked it up. So pretty tight, just a few months to try and get all that sorted. Set it on the Logitech kit because that's what they already had in their existing meeting rooms, and they wanted to standardize, so that was fine and quite easy to do as well. To try and keep costs down, the guys there actually volunteered to do all the installs. So they actually did all the physical installs and things. They were really good at that, and that was all kind of fine. They focused on just the first 3 floors so that, you know, when the president came, they could be like, oh, look at this, no, not that room, just maybe this room. So, yeah, but it went really well. And yeah, so that was the first phase. And then just another video from our Vice Chancellor about the project.
Creating more than just a building. It represents the culmination of a 25-year partnership between researchers in Malawi and Liverpool. Building sustainable ethical partnerships is at the heart of LSM's mission, and the Malawi-Liverpool Welcome Partnership embodies that. Creative represents a large investment for LSM. We know that our students and researchers benefit from the excellent collaborations with researchers in Malawi. The vision for MLW was always around development of capacity for African health scientists to address the problems that they see in Africa. Creator will go even further towards that in empowering and training individuals to undertake the highest quality research of relevance to the country and the region.
Okay, cool. I thought I would be really short, but I'm blabbing on, so I might have to race a bit. So phase 2 happened February this year, so not that long ago. We had the Wellcome Trust who funded everything visiting, so it definitely had to be done by that time. So yeah, like I said before, with that 1B option, we ended up supplying some stuff from the UK and South Africa, meeting in the middle, and then getting it done. So it was back to Malawi, back at Chileka Airport, and I had Dylan there from AVC and Sabelo as well. So that was the head engineer and the install engineer. So it was just the 3 of us to do the, and of course the MLW team. So when we come back, the building was well progressed, inside and out, still more furniture and things to go on. You can see some signage there. That signage there, actually, our IT director installed when he went over for the presidential visit. So everyone was getting their hands on the job. So yeah, and this is that round room I was talking about before. We were still finishing that one off, but it was it's kind of like a Malawian custom when it comes to meetings, and they all sit round a rounded kind of table, and ended up putting a Logitech site in the middle there, and that's worked quite well. Yeah, we had some digital signage go in and some boards for poster presentations. The lecture theatre, not quite as big as this one. All these seats and stuff were custom made in Malawi too, by the way. Very comfy, almost like airline style seats, very, very comfy. But when we got there, we realized, oh no, nothing had turned up. So we were all there, but everything else was still in the air. So we wanted to crack on with some work. So we got in the car, and went to look for an electronics store. We found A1 Electronics, but didn't fancy asking these guys to move so we could park. So we kept going and got to this place here, which had basically almost like an everything store. It had the biggest collection of Casio calculators I'd ever seen in my life. Not even kidding, there was about 5 cabinets worth of Casio calculators. It was amazing. And a bunch of other stuff. This guy here basically bought every single meter of speaker cable and every single HDMI cable and every single dongle and everything. So I made good friends with him. He said, "Please come back tomorrow." So that was fun. And this is actually the lectern, because we couldn't get one shipped over from the UK because the shipping was more expensive than the actual lectern. So, but again, that thing of sourcing things locally. So this guy cranked this lectern out. It's not finished there, but I think he did it in 2 days. So I had landed, we went there, I had a look, and then by the next day he'd finished it. So pretty amazing craftsmanship and speed. I whizzed through, looked at some shops, got some Malawian Doc Martens, which were really cool. By the time we got back, some of the kit was there, so we got to it. Sabelo was amazing. He had those speakers in the ceiling in minutes. It was incredible. Never seen such speed. Most of the time, he was sitting around waiting for us to make a decision about things. So, got everything up and running, programming going. A lot of the stuff didn't arrive. Some was still coming from South Africa, which was the ceiling mics and the displays and things. Found out it was being transported on a kettle truck. So my blood pressure shot through the roof because it was rainy season, and cardboard and water and electronics, they don't really like each other that much. But they knew what they were doing. It turned out to be fine, but I had to go back to the UK to my day job. And then, so the guys came back, cracked on, got the Sennheisers in, got all that going. They got ACPR going with, I think, the Ava MT300N, which was very good, worked really well. So then we had that equity in terms of, because we have that in our spaces as well. And there's a custom rack and a custom lectern there. And that was the room pretty much done. Dylan and Sabelo off, and then we did remote commissioning. So that's me there in Liverpool, Dylan at the bottom in Joburg, and then the MLW guys in Malawi in the top right. And then, this should be perfect, yeah. So, and then I'll just finish it off with this video, which should play now.
A nation that does not have strong research institutions is a nation being run on ignorance and guesswork.
Create a building will offer an opportunity for top-notch clinical research training for our students and faculty.
Some of the things that we'll be able to do in this building, in the fourth floor for the lab, for example, is what we call eye microscopy, which is basically cutting-edge microscopy, which we don't normally currently have in the country. So for us to look at certain organisms or to look at certain cells in human samples, we send the samples outside the country. But with the coming of the Vienna building, we'll have a room, a lab, specifically that's dedicated to microscopy. So instead of sending these kind of samples outside the lab, we'll be able to do this thing in country.
We come in and train. We go in the library to study and to innovate. We develop those research projects, we use the lab, and on the roof we celebrate Malawi's success.
the establishment of credible and high-quality centers of research and development, like the Creator facility we have just launched here today, is a good way of setting the bar high for the kind of standards we are looking for. Congratulations.
Yeah, so special thanks to Owen, Weezer, Samad, team in MLW. They're amazing. Nathan, my boss, Jim, Dean Smith from LSTM, Warren Tree, he's the technical director from AVC, Dylan Sabello. Dan Victory from GV, he helped quite a lot initially. Mike Molyneux from Pure AV, he helped with getting the stuff over there. The Leslie Lodge where I stayed, best chumbo and chips in Malawi, if you're ever over there. And the mighty Toyota Land Cruiser that got me everywhere I needed to go. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thanks for a fantastic presentation there, Tom. Really insightful presentation there into what was clearly a challenging project, but with many challenges very well overcome. No time for Q&A, unfortunately, but Tom's going to be around later if you want to grab him to find out more about that incredible project. So, leads me to introduce our next presenter. So let me tell you a bit about Rachel. Rachel Hamilton has been a prominent figure in the audiovisual industry for almost 2 decades now, and she's held some significant roles, including serving as brand director of AV Magazine. Subsequently, she founded a business and marketing consultancy aimed at helping brands grow sustainably by aligning sales and brand growth. Earlier this year, Rachel co-founded the RISE initiative alongside Sadie Groom, and as managing director, Rachel leads the organisation's mission to promote gender diversity and professional development within the AV sector. Rachel's work has been instrumental in driving inclusivity and innovation in the AV industry, making her a key advocate for change and development within the field. We're really lucky to have Rachel with us today. Rachel Hamilton.
Okay, so no need for introduction. I'm Rachel, and today I'm going to talk to you about something that's impacting all of us. The AV industry is in crisis. We're running out of talent, and there's no one banging at the door to come in. But the industry's growing at 6.1% year on year, and by 2026, we're going to face a shortfall of 2.3 million skilled workers. But we keep building barriers that are pushing women out. They're not staying, they're not progressing, and they're not coming in. Yet we are desperate for fresh perspectives, innovation, and expertise. But we keep shutting out half the population. This isn't a diversity failure, it's a business failure. But that's what RISE AV is all about. We're going to bring women through the door and fix that system that built that door in the first place. And that's something that I know all about because that system failed me. So, a bit of backstory. In 2020, I was in and out of hospital. My body was shutting down. And I was completely burnt out. From the outside, it looked like I had it all. I had a brilliant career, a great job title, and I ran the most successful team in the business. Everyone thought I was so capable and so strong. But on the inside, my body was shutting down. It took my body to stop functioning for me to even listen. But what was that? It wasn't COVID. It wasn't anything physical. This was psychological. This was unconscious bias. So I want to explain a little bit about this. And I want to shine a light on something that's really, really important. We are undermining women, but this isn't through malice, this is through ignorance. Men and women don't even know they're doing it. And I don't want to keep banging the gender diversity drum here, but this systemic failure is really hurting industries, and it's really, really hurting ours. So, this is a bit about my story. Behind the scenes, I was exhausted. I was fighting every day just to be heard and to be valued like my male colleagues. And this is what I'm talking about. So if I gave instructions or made decisions, people would often look to my male colleagues for confirmation. If I challenged things, I heard she must be on her period or it's time of the month. I was told to smile more because I looked too aggressive. I was told to wear makeup because I looked too tired. And when I asked for more resource, like my male colleagues had, I was told to stop moaning. And when I had to fight for the same job title that my male colleagues had, because I was outperforming all of them, I got it. But it was met with terms and conditions. And finally, the final straw, I learned that I was being paid a lot less than my male colleagues. And I was delivering bigger results and working longer hours. So what do you think this really says and means to someone like me? It means that my decision-making wasn't being taken seriously, that I was judged on my appearance rather than my ability to do my job, and that I wasn't trusted. What do you think this says about, what does this do to somebody's self-confidence, their self-belief, and their self-esteem over time? I questioned everything, my abilities, my intellect, and whether I even deserved to have my job. I did everything I could to prove myself. I even went back to uni and got a second degree and juggled the workload. I built up this facade that I could cope, and I always seemed fine in meetings, but often I would then go to the toilet and cry. I even developed an eating disorder because it was the only way that I could have some sense of control. I was a pressure cooker waiting to explode, and then I did, and then I ended up in hospital. And 5 years on, I still live with that chest pain every day. But unfortunately, my story isn't unique. This happens everywhere. Often, people don't even realize they're doing it. And this is why it's so hard to fix. But we can change things if we pay attention. This nearly broke me, and I was a senior figure in my business. Imagine if this happened to somebody just coming into the industry or starting out in their career. So I know this has already started off really heavy, so I'm going to shift the gears now. I'm going to share 3 steps with you that we can take to turn this around. The first is, why should AV businesses care? The second, the solution and how we fix it. And the third is how you can be involved in driving this change. So, let's start with a reality check. Women make up just 9% of the global AV workforce, and 2% of this is technical. That's shocking, right? Especially when women have been earning more degrees than men for decades. So, if the future of AV depends on attracting fresh talent, how can we afford to exclude half the qualified workforce? We can't. But we can level the playing field if we understand the barriers. And that brings me back to unconscious bias. But what is it? It's the snap judgments that we make unconsciously, those that exclude, overlook, and undervalue. So picture this. A group of AV engineers come on site to configure a system. If you're honest, how many of you pictured a group of men? If you did, don't worry, this isn't a flaw. This is conditioning. We all do it, even women. And my goal here isn't to shame anyone. It's just to make people more aware. The important thing is what you do next. So next time this happens, just recognize your bias, question it, and then readjust your thinking. You can even shift this lens to a meeting. And next time you're in one, just notice who takes the notes, who gets interrupted, and who gets heard first. You might be surprised by the patterns. But bias doesn't just show up in meetings. It also shows up in pay gaps, lack of role models, and in flexible working in male-dominated industries. I mean, I earn 22% less than my male colleagues. What does that say? And let's be clear, this isn't a women's issue. This is a business issue. But it isn't about bad intentions. It's about blind spots. So next time this happens, you've got a choice. You can either ignore it or you can change it. So now I am going to get on to the point. Why should AV businesses care? Sure, diversity is the right thing to do, but it's also a smart thing to do. And here's why. More women means more profit. Diverse teams are 25% more profitable. And more ideas means faster decisions. Diverse teams generate 19% more revenue from innovation and make decisions 87% faster. And retention is cheaper than turnover. It costs around 6 to 9 months of salary to replace an employee, and women are leaving male-dominated industries twice as fast because of toxic cultures, pay gaps, and lack of growth. And finally, we can't forget about ESG values. They aren't for show. This can often be the deciding factor between winning a new client, attracting investment, and landing top talent. So, I just want you to imagine a world where recruitment isn't a nightmare. We're not scrambling around the same talent pool, that workloads are less and stress is reduced, and we're not losing brilliant people because they feel undervalued. So we can achieve this, and now I'm going to talk about how. So let's look at the solutions. Luckily, we have a blueprint, because for the last 10 years, RISE has been empowering women in the broadcast industry and driving real change. And now it's AV's turn. So, how do we attract and retain women? We put them on the RISE AV professional development programs. We invest in them. We make them feel valued. We upskill them. We give them the support and the confidence that they need to stay, to come in and thrive. And how do we amplify women's voices? We give them the mic. Our Panel Plus initiative is going to give women the skills and confidence that they need to be on panels and speak at industry events. And the RISE AV Awards is going to shine a light on female talent from across the industry. And how do we build the future talent pipeline? We create career paths. The RISE AV Academy is going to bridge the gap between education and industry. We are going to inspire students from primary through to further education that AV is an exciting career. And we are going to help AV businesses develop their apprenticeship programs. And finally, how do we make the AV industry more attractive? The RISE AV certification program is going to help AV businesses with their DEI policies. And this isn't just for the UK. We are going to take this global. And whilst our RISE AV professional development programs are for women, our membership is for all genders from anywhere in the world, for anybody that wants to build a stronger, more diverse AV workforce. And RISE can do all this. And here's how. So, this leads me to you. Let's talk about personal responsibility. These are the actions that we need to take for the changes that we need to make, starting with your hiring processes. Are your job descriptions inclusive? Do they support equal pay? Do they support flexible working? Do you have support and career development for women? If you don't, speak up, start the conversation. You can also look at your supply chain. Are your suppliers inclusive? You could ask them what their diversity policies are. You could ask them what their ESG policies are, all within your RFPs. And you could choose to work with suppliers that prioritize diversity. You can also challenge your bias and become an ally. You can support others, create opportunities, speak out against outdated thinking, and call out unfairness. And finally, you can support RISE AV's mission in a number of ways. You can nominate women to be in our professional development programs. You can become a mentor, you could become a member, you can share this with anyone you want, share it with your business, share it with your network, share it with everyone, become an advocate. And if you've got any venues to spare, we'll definitely take them because we need them free of charge, basically. And finally, sponsorship. Everything that we do is free of charge. So sponsorship matters. And we need the support of the industry to do that. So we just encourage you to take Rise AV's mission back to your business and ask if you'd like to be involved. So it's going to take all of us to change this industry. And I am pretty much done. But I'm going to leave you with this. Great companies outlive people. They evolve, they grow, and they get passed on. Disney outlived Walt Disney. Apple outlived Steve Jobs. Ford outlived Henry Ford. We are the caretakers of this AV industry, and it's our responsibility to leave it in a better shape than what we found it for future generations. And that's what Rise AV is here to do. But we cannot do this alone. So my final question is, will you be involved? Will you be part of the solution? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That's great. I've got a couple of minutes for questions, if anybody's got any questions. Yeah, Mick, have we got the catch box? Fantastic, thank you.
Right, so it's unfortunate you've had an experience like that, and certainly the women at King's don't experience that as far as I'm aware, and they're promoted on their abilities. But as a hiring manager for nearly 9 years at King's for AV staff, till we were blue in the face, we tried to get women to apply, and there's not enough women out there who are interested in the industry. So for me, I think the problem is at school. So I've got an IT background. Originally, I'm from IT, and it was the same in IT. And over the years, I see it change, more and more women coming into the workforce in IT. And now it's taken for granted, you know, you could have just as many women as you would men in a IT section. So I think you should direct it at the schools. And it's getting girls interested in the industry at school rather than girls maybe working in the theatre and picking it up as they go along, like a lot of people did, I think, in this room who got into AV. So that should be the focus, because at the moment, there are not enough women out there who are in the industry to apply for the jobs or are interested in the jobs, in my experience. You know, I think I employed 2 women in 9 years who came into the industry who weren't already in it. So that tells you we probably had a turnover of 50 or 60 staff over those 9 years. So I think you should target the schools myself.
100% agree. And that's why there's 2 parts to this. The short term is, let's actually make the industry more attractive now to try and generate women, hence why we're developing the professional development programs. The medium to long is the Rise AV Academy. And this is already a tried and tested method in the broadcast industry. They are already in primary schools. They are already doing workshops to encourage workshops. They're actually doing summer schools as well. They're doing numerous things to generate interest in primary schools, but also with the parents and the stakeholders. So this is something we're actively looking at doing. We're putting a business development program we're putting a business plan together at the moment with our advisory board to create this Rise AV Academy. So it's something that we can actually do and actually track and bring a lot of the industry in to be involved in it. So I know it's something we can't sort of tangibly do right now, but it is our medium to long-term goal, is to focus on the long term.
Saying, and I completely agree. I know that Ben and I have had conversations, and I've probably been terribly vocal about it. I don't think it's just about women. It's actually about getting the younger generation. I bored a lot of people stupid, but when my younger daughter, who's going through her GCSEs this year, went to the school and they were doing, you know, kind of looking at what jobs they can all have. Yes, there was a lot of other things. There was, you know, there was cloud, there was, you know, networking, all of that lot. We're missing. That's what we need to do. We need to get into those schools at the age of, you know, 12, 13, 14, 15 and show them what we did. My younger daughter, actually, Lottie, decided she was going to come and do some work experience with my team, which was amazing. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Decided it's not for her, but not an issue. But I do think we're missing that. So it's not just about women, it's getting younger talent. So I know you talk a lot about the women and women coming through and being a woman. Yes, it's great to see that. And I agree that you don't get a lot of women when you're interviewing. But we need to look at getting the men, getting the transgenders, getting the everybody through, not just the women.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that the broadcast industry have actually done really well through doing this is because they've got this they're kind of just really showing that they're making an effort when it comes to sort of the diversity part of this, that it's actually been attracting people outside of just being a woman. It's been attracting more people, you know, all types of gender they've been reaching far and wide. So they have been tracking that and they've been having some real success in it. But I 100% agree, you know, the Rise AV Academy isn't going to just be for women. This is going to be for everyone. We have a much bigger problem on our hand. But as we said, let's start with our low-hanging fruit. Let's make the industry a bit more, you know, much more diverse, much more inclusive as it is now. And in the meantime, we are focusing on developing that framework that we can do to bring in younger generation. But as you know, this has been needed for donkey's years. This isn't going to be overnight, but it's going to take someone and some people to actually get behind this and finally start doing it and stop banging the drum, because that's the problem that we've had, that no one's sort of taken the risk to actually go and start this in the first place. And that's what I'm going to do.
Really sorry to cut such an important conversation short, but we are running slightly behind time. So let's thank Rachel once again for joining us. And Rachel will be joining us this evening, so please do get involved and speak with Rachel about how you can be involved with Rise AV as well. Okay, finally, to wrap up our presentations this afternoon, we're going to have the annual Avixa update from Mr. Ben Barnard. So welcome, Ben. Let's give him a round of applause as well. It's only fair.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you all again. And those of you who haven't met me, I'm the Regional Director for Avixa UK and Ireland. If you don't know what Avixa is, then come and talk to me. Grab my contact details either here or at the end, because there's a good chance that your institution is a member through the SCOMS programme, and I believe Mark's going to say a little bit about that after me as well. But I just want to talk to you briefly today about some of the facts and figures that have come out of ISE this year. Again, for anyone who's unaware, Avixa and CEDIA co-own the ISE show. So when I talk about ISE, that's why I might be saying we in that sense. And then also just some facts and figures about some research that we've done recently. So for those who aren't aware, hadn't heard the good news, this was our busiest show ever. We had over 85,000 unique attendees and around 92,000 square metres of stand space. So it was an absolutely mammoth show. But that's only really scratching the surface in terms of really interesting facts and figures that came out of the show this year. We had nearly 29,000 first-timers, and that's around 5,000 more than we had last year. That's a really encouraging stat, especially for the workforce development piece that Rachel was talking about there, and that the conversations we were having around that as well. You know, if you're going to fall in love with the AV industry anywhere, I think there's a good chance that it's going to be at somewhere like ISE. So fantastic that we have so many, you know, sort of first-timers coming there. And also really good news that over half of those first-timers this year were from Spain as well. So also really good to get the buy-in from the local population. We saw an increase in the percentage of CEOs who attended the show, but as well as the student and faculty group. So in terms of attendee profiles, we're really seeing gains at both ends of the sort of the career spectrum, if you like, the career timeline. Gains there are really good news, and the median age of attendees also came down this year by 1 year. That could well have been bolstered by the number of student and faculty group that came, But again, it's really good because hopefully for us that translates into a younger demographic that we're attracting, which again is really supportive of the workforce development piece of ICSA. Obviously aren't ageist in any way, but in my experience, I've heard a lot of stories of people coming to retirement age and who have announced to me that they're going to be retiring, and such as our good friend Piet van der Sanden here from TU Delft, who are going to leave our industry and take a whole load of knowledge and information with them, and it really puts it into stark reality of who's going to replace them. So that's definitely a conversation that we need to continue, but that the facts and the attendee profiles figures that we get from ISE certainly helps us with when we bring down that median age. And then also on the gender piece as well, which we've discussed here as well, we saw another percentage point gain in the number of female attendees at the show, which is great as we all strive for more diversity amongst our ranks. So and this is just the business focus side of things, so the end users. This is just some info on the area that the end users at ISE come from. Education, as you can see, is clearly leading the field here, which is great. I know a lot of people in this room attend ISE, so you're obviously clearly very well-informed professionals, which is fantastic. And also, I just wanted to pick out the broadcast and media segment as well. It's great to see that group, which also rose from last year, picking up 4th place as that convergence continues to happen in our industry. And then, finally, just you can see at the bottom there, we had a nearly 28% increase in end users coming to ISE compared to 2024. So the good news is clearly spreading, which is great. So ISE 2026, it's going to be upon us before we know it. So those are the dates. Go to iseurope.org for more information about that. If you're not signed up to their newsletter, sign up so that you can get updates on when registration opens. Get your hotels and your flights booked because they can get a bit expensive apparently. So yeah, those are the details for next year. And then I also just wanted to pull out a segment from one of our recent market intelligence reports. We've got quite a few reports. They cover various areas, but this is from the Market Opportunity Analysis Report, also known as the MORE report. And that's actually a study put together by end users and tech managers from our industry. So this is people like yourselves. And this particular slide is information about specifically focused on the UK and Ireland, where people expect to see the most amount of spend increase in 2025. So you can see there clearly that the education, learning rather, is leading the field, followed closely by conference and collaboration. There are a couple of reasons for this, as the research suggests, and as some of the things that are happening in those two regions. Policy reform in the UK is one of them, and initiatives to integrate AI into the classroom. That means that the education sector has been highlighted as a pro-AV investment area by many buyers. And then similarly in Ireland, the government have announced an €11.8 billion investment plan in education, and of course, a portion of that will be for technology enablement. Nevertheless, the investment focus does appear to be narrowing in on basics, such as the classroom and collaboration solutions. If you want more information on these reports, you can go to avixa.org/market intelligence, or as I say, grab my details at the end, and I'll share as much of that information with you as I can. But obviously, the reports are ones that you need to purchase. But if you're members, you can get discounts on that. But yeah, let me know. I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Maybe you can get one of your suppliers to buy it and then just read it over their shoulder. Oh, I didn't mean to skip over that. There's an update on membership pricing. It's been long overdue. We've tried our hardest to keep it, to stave it off as long as possible. We were supposed to update it in 2020, but we all know what happened then. So we've held it off for as long as we can. But unfortunately, there is a slight membership price increase. But the good news is that you don't have to worry about it this year because SCOMs are going to pay for it for you if you're members of the... That's right, right? Yeah. So, yeah. So said it now. It's recorded. So, So yeah, those are the increases. Yeah, and I'm sorry to be rushing through this, but as Matt said, we're a little bit over time, so I want to try and bring this back on schedule. The Audiovisual Network Professional, the ANP, is still going. This is a slightly older slide. It says new. It's still kind of new, but it's really important, I think, especially after the panel that Bruce kindly, well, the presentation that Bruce gave us, and also the panel that he chaired as well. It's a really good certification for those who are either AV professionals who want to know more about the IT side of things, or vice versa, the IT professionals who want to know more about the AV side of things. And as we kind of, I think, showed through that Q&A afterwards, it is about communication, it is about trying to learn some kind of common language. My colleagues and I recently sponsored and attended a conference called CITC, which is for all the colleges at Cambridge and Oxford University, and it was vastly more IT people than AV, and that's definitely an area that as AVIXA we're trying to infiltrate so that we can kind of try and spread that good word as well, so that it's not as difficult for people like yourselves to start that conversation. And I was really prepared to go to bat and kind of like have some difficult conversations and have maybe some polite arguments, but everything I said, the people there from the IT side of things were completely accepting of. They were saying, you know, our jobs, and this is not me saying, this is them, our jobs are, you know, make something work, plug something in, make it work. That's our focus, essentially, when it comes to AV equipment. We don't know or necessarily have in our remit the idea of kind of making the experience anything else than on or off. It's a binary exercise for them. So to have the AV people working closer together and to kind of be able to share the workloads as appropriately as possible is really important. And this is a first step towards doing that, if we can get the AV and IT people to do it, because let's face it, a lot of the time AV sits under IT. So yeah, so that's something that we're working towards. You can still get your ECS card through AVIXA if that's something that you need for work, if you need it to get on site. You need the standard health and safety certificate and your electrical safety unit. But then if you have an AVIXA certification, so CTS, CTSI, CTSD, then you can apply through us. And again, grab my details at the end, and I'll be happy to talk you through that, or put you in touch with one of my colleagues who can show you how to do that, or you can visit avixa.org/ECS card. Final slide, just before I pass over to Mark, is the AVIXA Exchange. So this is a great place to post, discuss, connect, share ideas. Think of it like a bit of a social media platform, a LinkedIn, but specifically for the AV industry. You can scan that QR code, it will take you there. If you have a login already for your education at AVIXA, then you can use that to log in here. If not, it takes 2 seconds to set one up, set a profile up, and then start having those conversations, connecting with various people. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to the LTSMG team for inviting me. As always, thank you to Strathclyde, thank you to Matt and the AV team for incredible support. And yeah, I look forward to speaking with you. I actually have to run and catch a train, but yeah, grab my details and I'll be happy to continue any conversation you'd like. Thank you very much.
So I'll not try to keep you all too long. You have to deal with one more big grumpy hairy Scotsman end of the day. I'm Mark Dunlop, I'm Chair of SCOMS, and thanks to Ben and LTSMG for tolerating this off slight bit. But I'm here because it's basically a follow-on to Ben's talk. And it's like, well, one of the things SCOMS is really doing and has done in partnership with AVIXA as well is this sort of CPD piece. And actually Ben's first slide was kind of handy, because I wanted to talk about ISE scheme as well. We have done that for a number of years. We see ISE as a key part of the CPD offering that we have. And in this year, for those who were there, we actually partnered really well with the LTSMG FEO. You know, we had the joint networking event, we had the joint lunch events, and I think it went really well and showed the sort of strength of the overall community in the UK coming together. So yeah, we had 40 odd people out in hotels, there was all that stuff, and so thanks to LTSMG, thanks to UShot for the evening. But what we want to know now is what you're looking for next year, because I am very conscious that the sector and budgets and training and cost cutting is everywhere, And we want to keep this going, but we need to make sure that the offerings that we have are the right offerings. So we need to know, is travel a problem? Do you need travel subsidies as well as hotels? We need feedback, because we have money, we have ways of generating income to get people to these things, but if we don't know the problems, we can't fix them. So please come speak to me, Graham, other members of the LTSMG exec as well. We can collaborate, we can try and put solutions in place to make sure these opportunities are available to you next year, even in potentially tighter financial climates than we're already in. Other CPD stuff, we've got the annual conference coming up for SCOMS. It's over in Belfast. If you can make it, fantastic. Linking to CPD, we do have the AVIXA training day. So we've got that's a half day of RU accredited training. But we've also at the end slapped on a different type of training for once. So this is more sort of general leadership training. It's not necessarily AVIXA based, but we thought we'd sandwich it with different kind of CPD offerings this year, just to sort of see how that goes. So again, there's that. It's on the 16th of June, so 19, so if you can make it along, please do. The other thing we kind of do there is, we have internally, we've decided to call it Delta. I'm sure I should know what it means. It's development, educator, just learning. It means something. But here's the key part. If you caught Ben's slide, you would see that if you weren't a SCOMS member, it currently costs 350 quid to get your bronze membership, and it's going up to 480. You can get a SCOMS membership for 325, and that's not changing, and everybody in here has either got one or eligible to be in SCOMS theoretically to get one. So if you want to do AVIXA, you'd be as well just joining SCOMS. And if you're not sure if your institution's got one, Jim's got a stand. We can do member lookup check. We can make sure you're on lists. We can liaise with Ben. We can make sure you're getting access to it. We can tell you who, or find out who your AVIXA IRM is and all that stuff. So please do that. And for the people who do need silver, I don't have pricing, but we will get discounts on silver, gold memberships as well. So if you're using them, just reach out to us, and when the renewal's due, we'll work out how to get that discount passed on to you. So that's that. There you go. Development, education, learning, training, and apprenticeships. I knew it stood for something. So these are things that we're trying to do outside of that, because all year round it's about development. AVIXA is part of that. But how do we do other things? So we've started to try and develop a training calendar, pulling a lot of manufacturer training, AVIXA training, so some of that's on our website, just to try and make it a bit easier for you to track what's going on. Apologies if it's maybe slightly out of date, but again, we're all trying to fit all this in the meantime, but keep an eye on it. It's where we're trying to get as much information as we can. One of the things that we're doing is we've got a Sennheiser open day. If you want to register to go to that, please scan the QR or find it. There's a bunch of emails. And then the other big thing that we're trying to do is we've got CTS in prep training booked in November. We will do an exam. We haven't quite worked out the exact way we're doing the exam. We'd like to try and tie it in the same way we did last time at the end. But the whole point is we want to do a training and we want to get you accredited promptly. So we're hoping to have that available for about 30 people, which is about the maximum you can do in CTS. But again, that's not the end of that thing. And linking to other conversations and Ben's ANP thing, if that's something which is interesting and we think is going to help, reach out to us. If we think there's a demand for something, we can work with AVIXA and Ben, and we can try and put these on as hosted things. We can get them available. You know, we can coordinate getting people together if we think there's a demand, and we want to know what the demand is, because there's no point in us putting on CTS if everybody goes, we don't want that, we want that. So please feedback. And that's me, because you've heard enough, and I'll hand over to these wonderful people who will know what's happening next. Cheers.
Thanks, Mark, for talking us through that. Plenty of opportunities for education, training and development within our very exciting audiovisual industry. And in fact, all this is starting to let me think about the next stage of our evening as we move into a more social time. We're going to be moving from this space back out into the sponsor exhibition for about another 40 minutes or so.
40 minutes, we're a little bit behind. So
so you get a chance out there to grab a drink and carry on looking around the sponsor exhibition for a bit. And in fact, on your way out, when you leave this evening, it's on the cusp, isn't it? There's a little gift for you to pick up on your way out. So in true Scottish style, we've made some etched, branded Glencairn whisky glasses, which you can find on the table on the way out. But I must admit, I mean, this one is looking pretty empty. Anything we can do about that, Matt?
Maybe.
Oh, hello. Oh.
We can get it open.
I didn't know I was...
There you go, sir.
I might come here again. Sláinte. I think, can I say that in Scotland? Do you know, genuine whiskey. So there's a miniature of Bunnahabhain. Campbell, have I said that right? Bunnahabhain. Yeah? Bunnahabhain, 12 years, a little measure with a Glencairn etched whiskey glass for you to collect on your way out. Just grab one each, please. Cheers. That's good.
Is it good?
It's good, yeah.
I'll be joining that in a moment.
Oh, now I'm... What?
There's two more things to say, Dave. We've done this the wrong way round,
I'm
haven't we?
taking this with me. You carry on.
All right, fantastic. So two more quick things. So is Paul Milligan in the room? Yeah. Fantastic, Paul. So Paul is kindly joining us from Innovate, and Paul loves coming to these events and talking to everybody because it's a great opportunity for him to understand some great projects that we're delivering within the HE sector. So if you've got anything you're currently working on or have worked on recently, go and have a chat with Paul this evening and tomorrow, and Paul will gladly be wanting to have a chat with you and possibly feature a case study in Innovate magazine. So please go and see Paul. So as we leave here, there's some table plans for this evening that are on a couple of the LEDs around the show floor. So have a quick look at those. There will be information when we get to Oranmore later on, but we thought we might as well make use of the screens as we've got so many of them here. So coaches will be leaving here at 5 p.m. sharp, so in only sort of 38 minutes time. Obviously, you can still walk back to the hotel, but leaving from the hotel to Oranmore tonight, we'll be leaving 7 p.m. sharp from out the front of the hotel. So time to get back to the hotel now. Or in 38 minutes' time, and have a quick freshen up. I need a whiskey, don't I?
No, but you've been drinking it
already. So brilliant, yeah. And one more round of applause for all of our speakers this afternoon. Yeah, and let's all venture out and go have a drink.
Cheers.
Thank you.